Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I am the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And today I am very honored to bring to you attorney Desiree Claudio. She is a family attorney out of New York City, and she is going to be sharing with us some information about what's going on in the family courts and with family court cases and those types of issues during this pandemic. And welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's a pleasure to be here.
Um, you're welcome. And I wanted to first start with just letting everybody know that although there's a pandemic and lots of things are shut down, your office is not shut down. You're working remotely, things are running smoothly, and you are taking tons of calls and doing virtual things every day. And if you would like to expand a little bit about how you're working with your clients and during this time, just so that they know, what to expect.
Absolutely. So I actually got ahead of this and had my staff working virtually first week of, I would say March 16th, the week of March 16th, which was before the executive order that basically told us there was a lockdown. I wanted to make sure that my staff was safe. One of my staff members had an underlying lung condition, and I really didn't want to overexpose my staff. I also had already been offering phone consultations and video chat consultations for potential clients. So we already had that in place, so it made it pretty seamless. My current clients also have the option of speaking to me through a video chat format, Zoom or other formats that we have that are safe and secure. Most of our documents are electronic, so the staff seamlessly was able to work from home. And I also made sure that my website was clear, that we're still working. And I think that the clients appreciated it. I mean, we also have a text feature, so the clients would shoot us a text if they were concerned about whether their court appearances were happening, or if they just had a simple question. We could always answer it from anywhere we were. So it's been working actually, but a lot better than I expected. Thankfully, my staff has been healthy and everyone is on board and ready to speak to our clients.
That's fantastic. And speaking of the courts, you mentioned something about the courts and how they're working a little bit virtually. Can you explain a little bit more about what to expect when it comes to cases? Are things getting pushed way off? Are things moving?
So in the family court, for many of the custody, visitation, child support cases, they were not working virtually. We've just gotten going probably a week ago. So it's been actually great. The court is offering Skype conferences. It's for attorneys only. But of course, when I have a Skype call coming up, I call my clients, I prep them, I let them know that we have a case coming up, find out whatever the immediate issues are, and the attorneys will have a Skype conference with the courts. Some judges prefer to do video as well as audio. Some of the judges are just doing audio, but we're able to get through some of the issues. The judges are actually now able to sign orders. So if a client has an immediate issue that needs to be addressed and has to be placed, language has to be placed in an order signed by a judge, the judges are able to sign orders at this point. It's been an uphill battle for some of the court personnel. It's difficult. Some of them don't have their files. So some of the cases, it's just about us explaining to the judge what our concerns are and the judge sort of attempting to help us get through it, right? So what is it that the judge can sort of tell us? Hey, listen, if this is the issue, here's how I would rule if you were in front of me in a court. You guys should go back and try to work things out. I think the court sentiment is that, yes, I will help you guys work this out. But the idea is that parents really should be trying to cooperate with each other during this time. And that's sort of the narrative I've been trying to push with all my clients.
Well, that is very interesting. And I mean, I know there's a lot of issues that are coming up right now. I mean, there always are when people are going through a divorce and the life after the divorce, that sort of thing. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, of all of the issues, what is the number one issue that people are calling you with questions on?
So there are a few, but the big one right now is, how do I deal with visitation? So when parents live in separate households and let's say there's an order in place where one parent has visitation, if we say alternating weekends, the client may call me and say, hey, I have an alternating weekend schedule, but the other parent is not allowing me to have that visitation, and they're using the excuse that they don't want to overexpose the child. There's, the whole virus pandemic and health crisis is making everyone, naturally concerned about the children moving from one household to the other. And that has been the biggest issue. And I get it from both ends. I get it from one side, a custodial parent who maybe is very concerned about sending their child for visitation with the other parent because they're afraid of any overexposure of sending the child from one household to the next. And there are a range of issues, right? There are several justifications as to why the visits are concerned. Maybe one of the parents is a healthcare worker, and one parent is afraid that because they're going out there every single day and they possibly being exposed, what are they bringing home and how can they possibly expose the child? I have issues where maybe there's a family member who is a healthcare worker, or someone in the household who's been tested and has the virus. How is that going to affect how one parent feels about allowing the child or the children to go to that household? And so how do we deal with that, the fact that there's a court order, but then there's also this feeling of I need to do what's in the best interest of the child or the children. And because the courts were not open, and even though they are open, they're only open very limited. How do we deal with this? Do we tell our clients, as a lawyer, right? Do we tell our clients, don't worry about the order, do what you think is best? Or do we say, well, there's this order in place that we can't change right now, so how are we going to figure this out?
Have you seen anybody changing it because someone in the household has the virus or is a healthcare worker? I mean, that is too bad to expose children to that. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't want it to I wouldn't want to keep anyone from seeing their child either, but that is, it's been so dangerous.
So there's two sides of the coin, right? So we have some parents who will take advantage of this situation, who have already been in this contentious custody battle, who are saying, this is a perfect time for me to keep and I don't know if people do, I wouldn't say that parents are doing it subconsciously, but when there's this environment of alienation, or maybe they've already been going through this heated emotional custody battle, it can lend to a situation where there's excuses, right? These are the moments where this situation a parent can take advantage of, right? The other side is there are real concerns. And how do we deal with them? And I have absolutely seen this. This has been, I would say at least, most of my day has been about sending emails to other attorneys, expressing our clients' concerns. How do we deal with if the child has been exposed, or if someone in the household has been exposed, perhaps we need to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I have been discussing the CDC rules with my clients. There was also a memo that came out from a judge in Brooklyn named Judge Sunshine, who is sort of the judge here in Brooklyn that everyone looks to. He's very experienced in matrimonial and family law, and he wrote a memo to attorneys on how to deal with these situations. And I've literally been reading them to my client and explaining to them, look, we have a court order here, and yes, we have to follow it. And as your attorney, I can't sanction you not, right, to follow a court order, because I'm an officer of the court, and I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, yeah, let's just disregard that order. However, you have to be able to make a decision as a parent as to what you think is in the best interest of your children. And so the memo discusses the fact that this is the time when parents have to cooperate with each other, and to keep in mind that once the courts do open, the judges and referees are going to be very very sensitive to how a parent has acted in these situations. Was there cooperation? Were you reasonable? If the child was in danger, did you take the time to communicate with the other parent and say, hey, listen, I need to quarantine the child for 2 weeks. Perhaps I can make that time up later, right? What kind of good faith are you showing? And so these are the things that I'm speaking to my clients about, because it's a difficult thing.
It is very difficult. I mean, you don't want to see a child get sick, and there's definitely a lot of scary situations right now. So I'm glad that they are at least setting out some guidelines so that people can, know what they could possibly do and have a few options. I mean, that's at least one good thing. Speaking of the courts and following guidelines while you're going, um, I just wondered what happens with discovery and ongoing divorce cases right now. I mean, if it's due, if you had a due date, is it still due at a certain time? Are they still collecting information and having the trial, pre-trial, and trial dates virtually now? Is that what's going to happen going forward?
So it's a good question. I had a few virtual conferences, Skype conferences with some of the matrimonial judges, and all of the judges have been extremely sensitive to the fact that many of the attorneys don't have access to their files. So, I'm lucky in that most of my files were digitized already. I had scanned many of the files into a software system that I have. But there are many attorneys who just haven't done that yet. And so one of the conferences I had yesterday, the judge, there was a particular document that was due from an attorney, and he apologized. He said, Your Honor, I don't have my file. I haven't had my file in, since mid-May. Could I have more time? So for those deadlines for discovery, perhaps there's an opposition to a motion. The judges have been very sensitive to that. And again, I think the sentiment has been cooperation, even amongst the attorneys. It's to say, look, talk to your adversary, discuss what was due, what's necessary to do. And they're even encouraging the attorneys to do stipulations, since they're not able to really do so ordered. Some of the judges can do orders, but even those who can do orders, they don't want to inundate the clerks with orders, right? Because everything is done remotely. And I think too, I'm going to be honest, some of the judges are, having difficulty with technology. So, if they do a so ordered document, they have to scan it and, send it over to the clerk. And some of them, are not as tech savvy. So, which is understandable. I think we're all sort of adjusting to this whole thing. And so some of the judges may have the authority, but they're trying to encourage the attorneys to work together. So they are extending deadlines. They're asking attorneys to do their own stipulations, to consent to new dates, to be mindful that some of the attorneys don't have their files, and prepare an agreement between the attorneys about whatever deadlines are coming up or documents that need to be prepared and provided to the other side. And everything is being sent through email. So the judges are encouraging that.
That's really good to know. And I know what you mean. Not everybody is tech savvy, and even if you are, learning some of the new technologies and how to get accomplished what you need to get done for your job is definitely one of those hurdles that's up there for many people right now. Luckily people are catching up. I know everyone's Zooming now, and nobody really Zoomed before. So that's what we're using right now. I do have a question on child support, and many people have lost their jobs, or their jobs are, they're just not working right now until things open up again. And obviously there's still a lot of bills that are coming in. There are some that can be deferred, but bills still need to be paid, and people need to eat, and all of that. So what is happening if one party can't pay?
So the court has not opened up the ability to file emergency applications for any like downward modifications of child support. And the judges have made it clear, from those judges that I've had Skype conferences with, have made it clear that, again, they are going to be very, very mindful and sensitive to the fact that people are not working right now. And I think they are seeing a lot of that as an issue. And some of the things that they said would assist during these times is to ensure that they get a letter from their job saying, either I lost hours or I was terminated. So making sure that those documents are prepared and ready. So if you haven't had a court date just yet, and you're unable to pay your child support, obviously communication to the other parent is huge. You have to make sure that it's just like with any other debt, you don't want to ignore it. You want to make sure that the other parent knows what's happening. And if you're in the midst of a proceeding, make sure your attorney knows and that the attorney is communicating with the other parent. You want to make sure that you're constantly communicating and not ignoring it. The other thing is start preparing your documents now, because when you do get in front of the court, they're going to ask you things like, where's the termination letter? What is the reason you were terminated? Make sure that your employer is able to give you a letter that's thorough, that says that you were terminated, why you were terminated. And then perhaps you need to have your attorney do some sort of affidavit, or maybe you do a job work employment history form where you say, look, I wasn't working. I tried. I sent a few applications out. Maybe you tried to find something, some kind of work where you could work online or remotely, or maybe, find a position that may have been essential. And show that you've made efforts, right? So that not only did you not ignore the fact that you have this order and you have this support, because the children need to be supported, but also that you're gathering your documents. And I think that's going to be critical. Again, I think the courts are going to be very mindful and sensitive to it. They're going to want to know specifics, when it started, what payments you missed, how are you going to be able to make those payments up, and how did you communicate this? And one particular judge did say that specifically, that she was going to make sure that if there needed to be some kind of suspension of support during that time, once the courts were back in order, that they may be able to avoid any arrears, any kind of any kind of fees or anything like that. The judges are going to be willing to adjust the order for those particular months in which you were not able to pay.
Wow, that's good. I guess it's good news depending on which side we're talking about here. As long as the children are provided for, I mean, that's really what counts. The last question I had for you today that has to do with court cases right now during COVID-19 is just about the division of assets. I mean, many people are seeing that their 401ks have gone down in value. Perhaps housing is going to go down in value. While we're doing these negotiations, a lot of times people have one number in mind, and now this thing has hit and nobody saw it coming. And the results are drastic and fast when it comes to your assets. Do you think that they're all going to have to be reevaluated? What is it that you think might happen?
So with the assets, if we talk about retirement, the retirement is valued from the date of the marriage until the date of the filing of the divorce. So the asset is going to be whatever that is, whatever the corpus is at that time, is going to be what the other spouse is entitled to. So, if you were able to, if the date of commencement of the divorce was in fact prior to the pandemic hitting, then there really won't be much of an issue. If in fact you decide to file now, and the asset has been depleted, I think the spouse is going to be out of luck. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the fact is the spouse is entitled to from date of marriage to date of commencement. And normally the attorney will hire a qualified domestic relations company to evaluate what is in the retirement and what the parent is actually entitled to, or the spouse is entitled to. And whatever that is will be equitably distributed. And it's date of commencement. So unfortunately, if you decide to file during these times, you know, the spouse is more than likely going to lose out. I can't imagine that the court is going to make any one other spouse whole in a situation like this, because it's not really the fault of the spouse who may have lost lots of money in their retirement, you know, their pensions or their 401ks. I think the huge assets that we deal with in these divorces is businesses and houses, right? Like, it seems as though the property values haven't really been affected very much, at least here in New York, which is a good thing. The houses are not being sold very quickly, although I have a case now where the house was actually someone on the same block purchased the house for more than it was worth because they really wanted that property. So it really depends on the particular situation, but the property values are pretty much steady right now, which is really good news for homeowners. And regarding any kind of other assets, if there are businesses, obviously, you know, businesses have been hit really hard. And, you know, whether or not a person wants to file for divorce right now may not be the best idea, because, you know, look, the value of everything is probably going to go down, other than, you know, homes. So it's something to consider.
Wow, stay in so that your 401k can recover.
Yeah.
Actually, so I lied. I do want one more question. Are you getting more calls for divorces because everyone is just stuck inside on top of each other for so long?
I have been doing a lot of research on this, actually, because apparently in other countries like China, who have been hit with this pandemic, the rise of divorces have been pretty high. The rise of domestic violence is also another issue. So yes, most of the calls I have been getting, probably 80% of them have been divorce, where in the past there was a mix. It's a mix of custody, child support, visitation. There have been more potential consultations from people who are looking to file for divorce. So absolutely. And I have a feeling there's going to be some more calls about domestic violence as well. I think I haven't really seen, or any divorce attorney or family law attorney in New York hasn't really seen what's about to come. I definitely think there's going to be on a rise. And I agree, being in a close proximity with not being able to go outside is putting stress on couples and families in general.
Well, they say it's kind of like Vegas right now. You don't know what time of day it is. You can drink at any time. You don't know what day it is. You don't know what week it is. I mean, it's pretty crazy in there. And I think that there's a lot of cabin fever going on. And if there were problems going into this quarantine with a couple, then certainly not having that break to go to work from each other is not going to help things at all. So I can see where divorce and crime and domestic violence would rise. So your phone is probably ringing off the hook right now. And once everything is lifted, you're going to be such a very busy woman.
Yeah, and I will say this too, Erica, and I didn't mention it. Some people don't realize that the courts are open for emergency hearings, and they are starting to open for cases that are already pending. So if you're out there and God forbid you're going through something really difficult, let's say a domestic violence issue. I had a potential client that called me. He wasn't getting visitation with his children, and he was so distraught about it because he hadn't seen his kids in over a month, and it's a pandemic, so it's already difficult as it is to think that you can't be able to see your loved ones. This video chat sometimes is not going to cut it for some parents. And he was so excited to hear that, wait a minute, I can file an application for him. I can do something for him right now. And so he retained me right away, and we have an emergency hearing pending for him to get him that visitation with his children. And I think it's important that everyone knows that you're not alone. There is something you can do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really good. And that is heartbreaking not to be able to see and give your children hugs and kisses and spend time with them. I mean, it is just, it's scary because you don't know when it's going to end. You don't know. I mean, we've got grandparents that would like to see our daughter, and sorry, like we don't know when you're going to be able to see her. We're FaceTiming as much as we can. And but it's definitely it's worse when it's a parent.
Yeah.
So those are my questions today. Did we miss anything? Is there anything that you wanted to bring up that maybe I didn't have on the list?
No, I don't think so. I just want to reiterate to everyone that I'm here if they have a visitation issue, if they're considering divorce, if there's an issue at home of violence, if there are issues where perhaps Child Protective Services, ACS, is involved because they don't have the technology for their children to put them in school, and ACS is now filing neglect petitions against parents who don't have the technology for their kids to be able to attend school. I'm here. We're here. We can file petitions and applications for you. We can see a judge. If there's an emergency issue, do not hesitate to call us. We can definitely help you.
Yes, and I do want to reiterate that as well. Attorney Claudio's office is amazing, and her people will fight for your rights, and they're very knowledgeable. They are in court every single day. And the note that I really would like to stress is that if you have an issue, call now. Don't wait until after the pandemic is over, because number one, you don't know when it's going to be over. Number two, there's a lot of cases in queue right now. And so the people that are smart enough to call now and hire them, get them going on the case, when things start moving, you won't have to wait months and months just to have your issues resolved. So don't wait, do it now. And that's what I had to say today. So thank you so much for joining us. You're always so cheerful and hardworking and informative, and I love the work that you do, and thank you so much for coming on today and informing us on what's happening with family law during this pandemic.
Thank you, Erica. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you.